Hello everyone, and welcome back to Rudy's 1/6 World for the next installment in our Retrospective Showcase series, where we look back at older figures I've had in my collection for some time that I think deserve a little time in the spotlight. And today we're going to dive into the world of Resident Evil with the Hot Toys 6-scale Albert Wesker S.T.A.R.S version, released under the Resident Evil 5 lineup of figures. So why this figure? Well, for starters, Damn Toys has been jumping to the line with a few figures from Resident Evil 2. And I have talked about them on my channel, but I figured, let me prove that I'm not just talking about those figures for the sake of talking about them, but that I actually do love the series and have a few in my collection. Now, Hot Toys released a ton of figures from Resident Evil 5 and a few from Resident Evil 4. And at one point, I did own pretty much all of them. Unfortunately, I parted ways with a bunch, including the Leon Kennedy from RE4 and the Shiva Alomar from Resident Evil 5. There was just a point where, living in an apartment, I was just stockpiling boxes, and it just felt like, why keep these? Of course, now with a house and a dedicated space for these, story changes a little bit, and I have to say I regret letting go of those figures. And my hope is that Damn Toys moves beyond Resident Evil 2 and jumps into some of the other games in the series as well. Now, that brings us to Wesker in his S.T.A.R.S uniform. Now, this is one of the two versions released from Hot Toys. The other is the RE5 version, which they called the Midnight Suit. We'll review that one another day, but Wesker was one of those key villains in the series. So I think it's great and vital to get him in the collection, especially in the few versions, given his betrayal of the S.T.A.R.S team. So let's start by looking at the full package you get here, and it's a decent setup. Now, some of the other figures in the line, like Shiva and Chris, do come with a ton more weaponry, but what you get here is pretty decent, including a few guns, a knife, some grenades, and a single alternate hand. Now, the hand itself is very reminiscent of those older style of Hot Toys figures, where they almost didn't care if your figure was just standing there with his hand in a trigger pose, even if it wasn't holding a hand. Now they're all about realism, so you get relaxed hands and so on, but there was a time where we weren't as fortunate. Now let's take a closer look, and we'll start with a single additional hand. That's right, just one hand again, and it's specifically made to hold the knife. We don't get relaxed hands or fists, just a knife holding hand. It does have some nice detail work, but it's basically a gloved hand and not as well detailed as some of the current figure releases. Although I will say the design of it with the high glove means that connecting it to the wrist pegs is a total breeze. Now, moving on to the weapons, we'll kick things off with the shotgun. And I'm not sure how based in reality this actually is, but it looks really good, including the wooden elements like the handle that are nicely painted and also nicely textured to replicate a wood-like grain. The black metal is also nicely done. Interesting thing here is that it does come with a laser sight at the bottom. It's interesting just because I'm not sure how realistic that is, but it does add to the cool factor. Now, this one does open up to reveal 3 shotgun shells within, which I think is also fairly unique. Next, you get a Desert Eagle, and it's Hot Toys, so the paint apps here are stunning, with the nice silver juxtaposed with the wood panels on the grip. Now, the gun also includes a laser sight, or maybe it's meant to be a small flashlight under the barrel that connects with a wire to the trigger guard. So I think that's pretty unique in that you would expect the person holding the gun to use his finger to operate the attachment. Now, the one interesting thing here is this is a fully molded gun. So while you can remove the clip, you cannot rack back the slide. Just curious, and maybe a result of this being an older figure where that level of functionality wasn't always expected. Piece still looks great, but it definitely is something that I feel dates the figure a little bit. Next, you have a Beretta, and this piece does have a functioning slide, and it's gorgeous. I mean, the paint apps on this are impressive with the metallic black and the hints of silver. The grip has some nice wood-like pieces with a textured plate that does include the S.T.A.R.S team logo. And the barrel itself does have some very clear legible text identifying it as a S.T.A.R.S team weapon. I know it's not meant to be his primary weapon, but with how good it looks, I almost want it to be the one that I keep in the display in his hands. Next, you get a huge hunting knife. It's very reminiscent of the Rambo knives with a nice white handle and the serrated edges with the metal dry brushing. That really does make it look good and realistic. And it does come with a nylon sheath that also harkens back to the original Hot Toys military figure days. And you have to clip the sheath onto his belt, and the clips are really annoying to deal with. Just a quick note to be prepared if you ever do get this figure, just be prepared for some level of frustration installing these. Next, you get a flashlight, which actually looks really good with the clear plastic lens cover and really nice texturing on the handle. There's not much else to say other than it's a decent accessory. You also get a nice radio that slides onto his shoulder harness and has an earpiece that connects to the figure via magnets. Now this is one negative and it seems kind of strange. The magnet on the earpiece has basically crumbled apart on me. It still works, which is kind of astounding, but the magnet just disintegrated, so something to be wary of. And the cable is a little finicky, so if it does pop off the radio, you may need a little glue, which is what I'm going to have to do. Now, keeping with our sunglass theme from all the past figures we've been looking at, Wesker does come with glasses. They aren't brand name or anything, but they do look cool and they fit nicely on the figure sculpt. And I think they're a defining trait that always helped identify Wesker. And again, they look great and they're unique, which is something I appreciate from Hot Toys. And finally, he does have two grenades that look good with the spoons and pins, and you can actually hang them from his chest ring. And they have a nice sticker on them with some additional information. Now, the only negative? He only comes with one extra hand, so good luck trying to get him in poses with them. Is it possible? Maybe, but I just couldn't figure out how to do it. And look, while I don't normally showcase the stands, I did want to do a quick check on this one because first of all, it's the very old style Hot Toys oval base that just had the nameplate on it. But you will notice mine does say Biohazard 5 instead of Resident Evil 5, and that's because I picked these up from overseas where the Resident Evil games are called Biohazard. So just a small interesting aside. Now, let's look at the sculpt, and the first thing that really does impress me here, especially for an older figure, sculpt still looks really good. Now, that might be partly because it's a computer-generated character, and I feel like recreating those is a much easier endeavor. But the face has great detail and paint apps on the eyes. And even the hair actually looks pretty good, and you can make out some wrinkles on the forehead. Like I did say, the eyes look pretty decent. Now, this figure did have a light up feature where the eyes turned red, but I removed the batteries a long time ago, and tracking down button cells for a review was just a little time consuming. But if you're interested, the figure did include that feature. Now, as far as the rest of the figure, first thing you will notice, he has very prominently exposed double jointed elbows. And I mean, the arms are very plastic looking as well. So nowadays, we see Hot Toys and other companies giving us textured forearms and really making an effort to add to that realism. So again, it's a little something that dates the figure. I do have to confess, I don't mind it at all. I know exposed joints aren't for everyone. I get it, but I like being able to pose my figures, and this figure poses extremely well. Now, as far as his uniform, he looks very much like the S.T.A.R.S version of the character with the dark short-sleeved shirt that has the S.T.A.R.S logo on the arm. The dark green vest, which also has some nice printing on the back that identifies him as a member of that team. And he has the older style military harness with the eyelets and the metal buckles. So he fits in with that older style military police look. Pants look just like standard BDUs. And they look good, and they're nicely tucked into the plastic molded older style combat boots. Now, I do think the boots look really nice with the black and gray color scheme, and the shoelaces, even though they're molded, look very realistic. These do also look very similar to the boots that we got with Dutch and Billy from the Predator line, so this might just be a reuse of parts here. But again, doesn't detract from how they look. So overall, I think the figure looks pretty impressive and fully kit up. I mean, what's not to like here? With the earpiece, the sunglasses, the shotgun connected to the harness on his back, he just looks amazing. Does he look dated? Maybe a little bit, but I think that's more to do with the gear than the figure itself. Otherwise, I think he holds up really well. And like I said before, he poses remarkably well. And with all the weapons, even the knife, you can really make him stand out. I do like reloading shots, and he's able to do that with the Beretta and the shotgun too, so that's a huge plus. I'm happy to have him, and I'm looking forward to doing a review on the other Resident Evil 5 figures in the collection. Now, big question is, where do we go from here? Frankly, Damn Toys is doing a pretty good job with the Resident Evil line, and I think it's clear at this point that not many other companies are interested in doing these. So while I like the two versions of Leon Kennedy and the Claire Redfields that they just released for Resident Evil 2, I'm really hoping for a Resident Evil 4 version of Kennedy. First of all, that game was incredible, and second of all, with Damn Toys already having done some Leon figures, it's not much of a stretch to think they could tackle this next. Plus, with the remake coming out, I think it's primed for us to get that version of Leon and the new version of Ada as well. I would definitely pick those two up in a heartbeat. The other ones I really would love are a Resident Evil 3 Jill and Carlos, and for Resident Evil 5, like I said, I regret selling off that Shiva Alomar figure, so I'm hoping Damn Toys decides to revisit that because I really would love to re-add her into the collection. So I do think there's a bright future for this line, if Damn Toys can continue on with it. I think the interest is there. Would I pick up another Wesker though? I'm not sure. Looking at this guy, even with some of the age-related issues, I can't help but be happy at how he looks. And with the other RE5 figures I have, they just really make for a great set. So I think at this point I'm just looking to selectively supplement this collection. And I will review the other Resident Evil figures I have in the coming weeks and months, and we'll just have to keep an eye on Dan Toys. Ball's really in their court at this point. So, with that said, let me know your thoughts. This was a quick look at Wesker in his S.T.A.R.S uniform. Let me know your thoughts on this figure and on the Resident Evil line in general. And as always, thank you for watching, and if you are enjoying the content and you wouldn't mind, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll touch base on the next video.